Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's episode of Bible 365 with Kathy Carter. Today, we are starting on day 22. So, if this is the first episode that just pops up for you for whatever reason, this is a chronological Bible reading of the Bible, Old and New Testament, and we are on day 22. So, I have all the way back to day 1, starting in the very beginning of Genesis. We are currently in the book of Job. So I would love if you would, if you're seeing this for the first time, to go back before you go forward, because I would love for you to start at the beginning. I think things make a lot more sense when you start at the beginning and then move forward from there. We're doing a chronological reading of the Bible, which means we're doing it essentially historically instead of the way that it is lined up in your Bible. For those of you who aren't really super familiar with it, the way it's lined up in your Bible is sort of by genre. And so we have things starting in the Old Testament, which is the Pentateuch. And then we move on from there. There are some books of wisdom. There's some historical books. There are the book of the large prophets, the major prophets, the minor prophets. And then, of course, we have the New Testament. So it's not really set up as it happened historically, which could make it a more confusing read. And so in this version that I'm having us do, or that I'm doing and hoping you guys join me in, is going through it chronologically, historically, so things have a bigger connection. And so I would love if you would join me. But again, if you are seeing this for the first time, try and go back and then start from the beginning and then proceed with us from there. So I have a recording every single day. And so you can pop on and then catch up at any time. So today we are continuing in the book of Job. And if you've seen some of my other recordings, you will note that I said this isn't really one of my most exciting books for me to read. I find that it's just, and I'm saying this from my own perspective. So when I give you what I'm giving you, I'm not trying to give it to you as a teaching perspective. I'm trying to give it to you as what I am in particular reading when I read this text. And so what I might find is when I come to the end of the book, some of the ideas I had in the beginning might not be dead on, right? So some of the ideas and the concepts that I'm reading right now might look a little different by the end of the book. When we sort of see a big finale at the end of the book, or they might not, they might be exactly the same. And this just might be what God decides to show me in this reading. So I don't want to take that away from you. I want to make sure that you are reading as well, and you are reading the words here, and then God is inspiring you to see what he wants you to see in your own personal reading. And then so then you get what you read, and then you can hear the way that I see certain things and things from my perspective, and then you can sort of bounce ideas off in that way. And so it gives us, I think, a deeper and a richer understanding of scripture. And I think that's what God intended. I don't know if he necessarily into, especially some of these tiny fine details, I don't know if he intended every single one of them to, I hate to even say this way, but only have one meaning, because some of them can be there can be multiple meanings. In other words, not that they would be two separately different things, but there might be some depth in there that we hadn't seen prior, and that maybe pops up later. I know that for me, reading Genesis this time around, I saw a lot of imagery of Jesus that I had really not seen before, and so some things sparked my in my brain, and so some things popped up in that way that I just hadn't seen before, and maybe I wasn't ready to see it, or maybe just through the multiple readings, I'm able to read a little bit more into it. So I don't ever want to take away from your own reading, and I don't want you to take away from my reading that everything that I say is verbatim and everything that I say is the end of it, and then you walk away and then you never have to look at it again. It's continually being read, looked at, learned from, and we grow in that area. And really what we're growing in is a relationship with Jesus and with God. So this is our relationship that we have with him. Knowing him more, loving him, and trusting him more, and therefore that sort of coming through in our life. So, moving on to Job. Today we are on, this is day 22 of our reading. So, as I always let you know, this is the 1-year chronological Bible reading plan, which you can find online, or you can get the Bible that they actually ordered it in. And since I haven't done it every day, I'll show you today. This is our reading, and so it dates it for you, and so you can see exactly what we have and what was coming next. And so every day you would have that, and so it would be a really easy reading for you if you wanted to order. I have no affiliation with them. It's just a plan that I like. So in our reading today, we are doing Job 12 through 14. The beauty of reading Job is it is straight through. We're not interjecting any other book in this today, and we are just doing a straight through reading. The downside of doing a straight through reading in the book of Job is it's a little troubling. There's not a lot of high points in it. So going back to the beginning of the book, because I think that helps us understand what's happening now. Going back to the beginning of the book, I saw that God has his angels have come to him, and one of those angels that has come to him is Satan. And he asked Satan where he has been. Satan said he's been roaming on the earth. And then God asked if he had seen Job. And Job, then, because Job is faithful and he's blameless and he loves God and he shuns evil. And Satan said, well, that's because you protect him from everything. And then God said, at first, his first test, he said, I will protect his body and his life, but I won't protect his stuff. So he gave Satan free will to go down and sort of terrorize Job. And then when he came back the second time, he said, you're still protecting his body. And therefore, God gave him the ability to do stuff to his body, but not take his life. So at this point, the only thing that has been fully protected from Satan is the life of Job. So his life itself. So he is not dead. And now we see that Job has 3 friends that are with him, and they are having a back and forth conversation about some of what's going on in Job's life, why it happened. And it looks like the friends and even Job are all consistently pointing to the fact that Job was pretty sinful in his life, even though Job keeps saying, no, I'm blameless, I'm blameless. But they're all sort of pointing to the fact that they think that Job had some sin in his life, and that is why God has punished him because of the sin in his life. So now what we're going to see is we're moving to Job 12. And in Job 12, he's responding to his friend Zophar. And he's just frustrated with his friends. His friends keep telling him how he's wrong and how if he would just turn to God, then all things would be better. And then he would get stuff and he would have hope and he would have joy again. And so all of these things. And he's definitely really frustrated with them. I think that they're lacking an understanding probably of everything that has actually happened to him. And they blame it on him instead. And so when we go to verse 5, I want to go to verse 5 here and read it. It says, this is Job speaking to all of his friends. So he's responding to Zophar, but he's speaking to all of his friends. And he said, those who are at ease have contempt for misfortune as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. So what he's noting is that his friends right now are probably in a pretty good place in their life. And it's really easy to point the finger at somebody who is struggling and when they're not struggling. So it's really easy for us to point the finger and to play the blame game and to say things that maybe don't make sense or things that aren't true because it's based on what we see outwardly. And so he points to his friends as sort of having this type of behavior that easy for you to say, essentially. I always just think to myself as I read this, I always think to myself, just be careful, just to be careful. There are times in my life where I struggle and times are not great, times are bad. And it's easy for me then to be compassionate when I'm having those times. And it's really hard for me to be compassionate when everything is going well. I struggle with, hopefully like everybody else, I struggle with compassion for other people and not recognizing that maybe it was because they did a certain thing or they behaved a certain way. And that's why something is happening to them, right? We always have this idea of if this, then that. Right. So if you smoke cigarettes, then you get lung cancer, right? Or if you have lung cancer, it's probably because you smoke cigarettes. So, and obviously that's just a very basic example, but it seems to be in the root of all of our thinking. And so we're hearing this over and over and over again amongst his friends and again amongst himself. He doesn't seem to deny to the guys, his friends, that it's sin that causes the problem. His only denial is that he doesn't believe that he has been sinful enough to have caused all of these bad things to happen. And so in verse 4, his friends are smearing him with lies. And so he's really upset. His friends keep saying bad things about him. They keep saying, you did this, you caused this thing to happen. And he's saying, no, that's not true. So then we move to verses 5 through 12. And in 5 through 12, it says those who are at ease, and it says the tent of marauders are undisturbed. So like there are other people that are not great and God is leaving them alone. But then he says, ask the animals and they'll teach you. So he has this in 7 through 12, he has this section of believing that everybody, uh, everyone knows that God does all these things. So everyone recognizes that God is the hand of life for every creature. He is the breath for all mankind. So he says even the birds know and everything knows who God is. So again, he's telling us these amazing things about who God is, and he's reminding us and saying that everyone knows who this is, and to be wise. And then in verses 13 through 25, Job is discussing a lot of God's power. And some of the things that really stood out to me were in verse 14. It says, what he tears down cannot be rebuilt. Those he imprisons cannot be released. And I think what he's saying is if God decides to do it, nothing can get it to be undone. So what God decrees to happen won't unhappen. And then verse 24 is another one. It says, he deprives the leaders of the earth of their reason. He makes them wander in a trackless waste. So again, we're showing Job is stating a lot here of what he does to the human race. Like, one, what power he has, and then two, what he does with that power. I'm really having some struggles with the way in which he speaks about God, because I know that God has the ability to do all these things. I believe that the things that he does do, he does for good. And so I'm sort of having just a little problem with his dialogue, because um, he seems really angry with God. Again, in our minds, justifiably so. He seems really angry with God, and so it looks like he's blaming God for things. He's blaming God for things that we might see as bad, but God might see as good. So and I want to move on to chapter 13 of Job. And in chapter 13, one of the things that so he's still talking, but it looks like in this, so Job is still the author, or the speaker I should say, in this section, but it looks like he's changed from talking to his friends to now he's talking to God instead, and he's trying to argue his case. He's trying to let them know that he's not guilty, right? So he's not guilty of the things that it looks like he's being punished for. It looks like he's being punished for a huge amount of sin, and he's actually just blameless, and he's not guilty of all of that sin. And so in verse 5, and it looks like verses 5 through 12, he is yelling at his friends. So he's frustrated with his friends, and he's telling them that he just wants them to be quiet, that they are not really doing any good for him. They're not handling the situation well. And so he's just asking them, because they keep saying that Job is bad, and so he just wants them to stop sort of helping at all. And then in verses 13 through 19, it looks like Job is preparing to speak with God, and he thinks that he's going to be delivered. So he's saying, if only I could talk to him and let him know what I have done for good, if I can plead my case, so to speak, I'm sure that God is going to deliver me from any of this hardship that I have. And then so verse 20, we see he's turning his voice to God. Verses 20 through 22, he says, only grant me these two things, God, and then I won't hide from you. Withdraw your hand from me and stop frightening me with your terrors. So he's asking him to stop all of this. Stop killing anyone that I love. Stop making me sick. Stop destroying everything that I have. He says, then summon me and I'll answer. Let me speak. Let me let you know what I have done, so you can first keep your hand from me, then call me up, and then I can plead to you the case that I have. He's in verses 23 through 28. He just keeps saying, how many ways, how have I gone so bad? You have, verse 27, you fasten my feet in shackles. You keep close watch on all my paths. So this brings you back to that chapter before, where it looks like he thinks God is being unjust. So again, that that sort of some of those things that he was saying before about what he does to humankind. It looks like God is being unjust. And he's like, God, you're being unfair. And if only I can come to you and let you know that I'm really a pretty good guy. Now, I want to move on to Job 14. He just talks about humans in general. So at this point now, he's sort of giving an overall understanding that our time is limited. And what I think is funny in this section is 7 through 12. It reminds me of an expression that we use in this generation, which is YOLO, and you only live once. And he's saying there's like no hope in life or death. So in 7 through 12, it says, at least there's hope for a tree. If it cuts down, it resprouts again. Its roots may grow old in the soil, and its stump will die. Yet at the scent of water, it will bud and put forth shoots like a plant. So the tree has hope. He has no hope. He's just going to die. Everything is going to dry out. The heavens will be no more. People won't awake. He's pretty low. He's thinking of mankind in a pretty low space. He actually thinks more of the trees than he does of humankind. So then, verse 14, it says, if someone dies, will they live again? All the days of my heart service, I will wait for renewal to come. It makes me curious. Renewal seems that there will be something after, right? So right now he's lamenting that he has no hope, but he thinks that renewal will come after. But I'm wondering if his issue might be that renewal won't come if he doesn't plead his case of innocence, that he thinks that that he won't deserve or get that renewal because God thinks he's sinful and God is punishing him. Therefore, he won't be renewed. So it leads me to believe one of two, or I should say two things. Thing one is that there is renewal. So he's believing that according to God, there is a renewal. So there is something, but maybe that he won't be getting it because of the sins that he's committed. And so again, that would make his argument even deeper, that he wants to argue and say, and let God know that he didn't do any of these things. And it's in 18 to 22, essentially God is destroying any of the hope that he has for his renewal. So this is how we're ending today. Now we'll go on to January 23rd, which is tomorrow, and we will hear from some other people, I'm sure, at this point. Again, I kind of feel like Job has left us at a bit of a low point. Maybe we can just be hopeful that we put our hope in God and not in the stuff that we do. So maybe this is a practical reminder that that they're down the wrong path. And you can see they're all kind of arguing about it, but they're down the wrong path. And again, I want to continue to go back to that very first chapter, where it has nothing to do with what Job did. As a matter of fact, we see that God said that Job is blameless. So this isn't about his outward. This has something to do with God and God alone. And so let's put our hope in the fact that God is who God is. God is God alone. And he does have control over these things, and he is as powerful as Job said he is. And yet he doesn't use these things for evil, but he uses these things for good. So that is our hope for the end of today, so we can move on and read a little bit more of Job tomorrow, next time. If you guys have liked this, if it has been, I don't want to say a blessing, but if it has been a blessing to you, then please subscribe, please share this with other people, and like it, so it will continue to pop up on your daily YouTube watching. Thank you for today, and I'll see you again tomorrow.